Well, hello everybody, and late to my own party here. This is welcome to White Line Fever Live. That's if you're watching on Facebook. If you're listening the podcast, welcome to the first episode of White Line Fever Kicks. And if you're on YouTube, welcome back to White Line Fever Kicks, which was last on YouTube about 2 years ago. Before I introduce the guests on the first show, I just want to, this is not just a washed up old journo who's trying to create a little bit of content because he's got nothing better to do. This is an actual flagship program, that's the intention anyway, for Rugby League Hub, which has just been relaunched as a live platform. And thanks to the great people at Rugby AM and also Rugby League Backchat, we've actually already had free-to-air television programs which have aired on this very Facebook page. And the aim, with the help of Brendan Smith and a whole bunch of other people around the world, is that we will actually be having games, and it will really be, as the name suggests, finally, as it says on the box, it'll be a hub for live content. And as you can see already, there's a lot of podcasts go up there. There's up here, and there's also a lot of links to commercial broadcasts, including NRL and Super League games. So you actually get told in real time when a radio commentary or a telecast is starting. And you just have to click on the link, and in some cases, if you've paid, you get to watch it. In other cases, it's free. So as I said, late to my own party, the normal technical problems and gremlins, which I'm used to now. But I've got Sean Lawless and Phil Wilkinson on the first program. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I did notice for those people in the UK who've been up, and I guess if you're in Australia, you've got to have insomnia if you're watching us live now, that even Sky, with their live interview with Robert Louis and Jackson Hastings, were an hour late today. So I don't feel too bad. Guys, I'm going to actually hand over to Sean, because Sean's been running Wigan Rugby TV now for how long? About a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, as a blog, I guess I've been doing it for about 2 years, but the live shows probably since the start of this year, and you were one of the guinea pigs, Steve, in one of the first interviews that I did, and Phil's joined me quite often during the year as we talk pretty much anything to do with Wigan Rugby. So you've got two Wiganers on screen with you, so we'll try and steer the conversation away from Wigan as much as we possibly can.
It's amazing technology, and I want to thank you for your help in allowing this program to go ahead, and maybe at some point you'll be able to fumigate it after I leave. I'll come up to your house and learn how to use it myself. We'll co-host a show. So I'm going to hand over to you, Sean. I guess our agenda's pretty loose. There's a lot to cover, particularly since this is our first show. We can go back to the birth of each of us if we need to go back that far. But I'm sure we don't. I'm sure we only need to go back a week or so, because there's been a lot happening in rugby league on both sides of the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess we've got an agenda of what we want to talk about. Phil, I'll bring you in first of all. One of the big things that we've been discussing, obviously, off air about various things is a Super League Dream Team. I know I'm probably going off complete topic of what Steve wants to start with, but Steve, have you submitted your Dream Team? Have you done one?
I'm just going to listen to yours, and I'm going to go, yeah, no. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to agree with you. So I'll just listen to yours.
I'm going to pass over to Phil to start with then. Do you want to run through your Dream Team?
Yeah, so I got my voting form through this week. I went through it this morning. Spent a good hour on it, actually. I take it really serious, and I try not to show any club loyalties. It is hard that they still do persist with putting a standoff in there, Steve, and a scrum half in there, and a loose forward in there. And, which clubs still run with a standoff and a scrum half and a traditional loose forward other than Sean O'Loughlin at Wigan, maybe Greg Bird at Catalan? And it was hard, and because you've got to weight it on form over rounds 123, not so much with the cup and not the Super 8s, and so fullback you've got to then lean towards Ben Barber, even though he's obviously tailed off in recent weeks. And you do find, I found in the Super League, Steve, I don't know if you agree, but some positions are just centre, for example, is nowhere near as strong as wing. Hooker is a really, really strong position. You've got Roby, Paul McShane, Mickey McLaurin, and then other good hookers in there. And yet you've got other positions which are just halfbacks, standoff and scrum half. There's a real lack of quality in those. And every time I come to do this Super League Dream Team, certainly these last few years, it's kind of exposed that weakness in those positions.
So you're going to read a shit to me?
Go on. Do you want me to start?
I went Barber over Sam.
Yeah, I've got
Barber. Saints, Tommy Makinson, and Josh Charnley on the wings.
Yeah, I've got exactly the same.
Yeah, have you? Centre, Bill Tupou at Wakefield, And then the other one, to be honest, I was split. I could have gone with quite a few. Percival or Gilder. I think I went with Goodwin from Warrington. But to be honest, I'm not going to make a strong case of that because it was really just, I had Bill Tupu and then the others are just, way down there. Standoff, he is probably the most contentious. So I went with Jake Connor. He played more games than I thought he had. He's played 21 games this year. And I know he started at centre. He's played a few games there and then he switched to standoff. But I thought earlier on this year, he was the reason I was watching Hull FC. He obviously made his England debut. In fact, Steve, you were there in Denver. I thought he had a great game off the bench. Obviously, he's injured now and Hull have dropped away. He got my standoff role. Halfback was Josh Drinkwater, just for the way he's transformed Catalan's fortunes. And another Catalan player is in my team. He's in the props, Remy Casti. Not just because he still wears plumbing tape around his head, although that is a massive factor in it. Who was the other prop forward? The other prop would have been Luke Thompson at Saints, James Roby at Saints between them, and then the back rows would have been. This is when I get to my first Wiganer in my dream team. John Bateman, Sean O'Loughlin, the loose forward, and the other back rower. I can't remember if I went Matty Ashurst or Edwards at Catalan or the Castleford back rower. I was between them all. I think I might have gone with Edwards at Catalan, just to like Drinkwater, just for the impact he's had. I
think I've actually got a very good reason why I haven't thought about this. I wasn't asked to vote, so there you go. Sorry. I think I have been asked in the past, so I wasn't asked to vote. But so I'm not going to argue with any of those points. But you might, Sean.
I mean, I wasn't asked to vote other than Phil asked me to do a piece for the Wigan Post. I just went Barber, Makinson, Percival, Tupu, Charnley, halves of Richardson and Lomax. I feel like as a Wigan fan, there's too many Saints players in there, but Richardson and Lomax, Luke Thompson, James Roby, Saints again, Sam Moore, just because his performance at the DW for Catalan is the best performance I've seen from a prop this season live. And then I went all Wigan as a back row, John Bateman. I think probably the most underappreciated player at Wigan at the moment, Willie Isa. I went for Willie Isa. And Sean O'Loughlin. So that was
Willie actually one of the nicest guys, but the trouble there is with these positions is you've got to go with him playing in the majority of those positions. And I've not tallied up Willie Isa, but I bet he's played a fair few in centre as well.
Yeah, he played pretty well at centre, obviously, last week. You just mentioned the Denver tests there, and obviously, Steve, you were at Denver. Mark here on the comment says, assume you'll be talking about Denver. I think this shows we were right to test things out with these promoters. Maybe time for Plan B in 2025, though, unfortunately. And Phil then adds his Plan B, France. So over to you, I guess, Steve, with Denver. First of all, your reaction, and I know you loved it over there, but then the reaction, I guess, to the fact that the Kiwis haven't been paid for or fully paid for their involvement.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I can tell you that I did see Jason Moore the day after the game, and he was talking about next year and planning for next year. But then we heard that his promotion he was going to run in Sydney, which I think involved fake snow in the Domain, that wouldn't have been cheap. He had that company had been liquidated. There's a pun, the fake snow being liquidated. But and so then we started to worry, I think, and obviously he's or more sports in general have kind of been hard to get hold of over the last couple of months. Look, I've got I think there's almost no chance of more sports promoting the 2025 World Cup in the United States and Canada. But I agree there's no, you will never get me to say, and I admit I'm wrong often, and I am, because I am wrong often. But on a spare weekend where there's no club rugby league, NRL clubs have no right to dictate where two countries play an international, and they have the mistake is theirs to make. They have the right to send themselves bankrupt. They have the right to put their trust in someone who subsequently proves themselves not worthy of it. It is not the NRL's. It's none of the NRL's business. And if they had information that Jason Moore or More Sports in general, for reasons which may or may not be down to him individually, would not fulfil their commitments, then they should have coughed up that evidence straight away. So I think it's too early to say there'd be no Rugby League World Cup in the United States and Canada. Who knows what might pop up in the next year or two? But I don't think the Rugby League International Federation is kind of inclined to trust a promoter who maybe not only doesn't pay the bills on time, but maybe doesn't communicate with the debtors, as well as they would like.
Steve, do you think this could be a good thing in the sense that they've not exposed him, but they've come up with this problem now after a one-off test rather than somewhere down the line where they were planning a 12, 16 teams, multi-game event all on One Nation, promises of $10 million. Are you kind of disappointed? Obviously, I know you're a big fan of the expansion, but are you kind of glad they've kind of found this problem now rather than down the track? And
totally. And when the people were saying this guy's untried, that was my response before the game, and some of the social media debates got quite heated. But I said, well, it's better to find out now than to find out in 2025. So I would actually say that, and I actually think the game should have this approach to all big events, in that if someone wants to hold a state of origin, a city wants to hold a state of origin and beat I know the NRL don't like private promoters, but let's say a government, a city council, a state government. I say, let's start you off with a small community nines tournament, or let's start you off with a trial match or pre-season friendly, and then work up. Instead, all the clubs try to undercut each other with these deals. They go off and do their own little deals, and they often don't know if things are going to fall through until they do.
You would think though, like Wollongong Council, which were in partnered with Wigan to get the and the tourism board there to get Wigan over, and even the city's tourism boards in getting Magic weekends to their cities, you'd think they would be more reputable than just because of government, you'd think they'd be more reputable than a private company. Do you think there was a lack of due diligence on the RFL and the RLIF's part in checking out?
It's too good an opportunity, wasn't it?
Yeah, not only that, he did take the start of a Major League Baseball season to the Sydney Cricket Ground. So if that game had have only half full the Sydney Cricket Ground, maybe he wouldn't have been in a position to make this offer for the England-New Zealand test. So I think there was one very big run on the board, and there was no. If you could let me put it there's the IP of the New Zealand and England rugby league teams. It's enormous in a way, but is it commercialised the same way of two Major League Baseball teams? No. And so those two properties are commercially more valuable, and he successfully ran a promotion. I can't remember the two teams, but he successfully ran a promotion with two Major League Baseball sites. So to me, that if I was Ralph Rimmer, or obviously there's been a revolving door of officials at the New Zealand Rugby League recently, but if I was those guys, I'd go, well, if he can put a Major League Baseball game on at the Sydney Cricket Ground, then he can put on a test.
I was down at Wigan earlier on, and Sean O'Loughlin, he wasn't sure if it was confirmed that it was off, and I said it wasn't. And he was, you could tell he was disappointed, and he said it was a good event, really good event. He said it didn't come across, but the atmosphere at the ground was really good, and fans got into it, and obviously it was quite a high quality game. And he said, but from a selfish point of view, in terms of England, he said they really need. You've got Tonga now playing New Zealand. He said England need to play a high-quality side mid-season. And he said not from a personal point of view, he's not sure if he'll be playing for England next year, but from England's point of view, he said the Samoa test last year, the Denver test this year, he said it's really important that England get something going. You can't help think after this experience, though, they'll go on a safer ground, won't you? It'll either be a test against France on home turf or a trip, like a repeat of almost a Samoa game a couple of years ago.
I mean, it's devastating for rugby league in America as well. At the same time, I think that's one of the key points to make about this. I mean, Steve and I have obviously spoken to Nate, who does Rugby League in America podcast, and he was pumped for the Denver test, and the fact that you had 2 more years of that to come, followed by the World Cup, and that obviously isn't happening now, and the World Cup is potentially in doubt. It's devastating for the potential growth of rugby league in America. I mean, I'm even wearing a Copperheads jersey from America at this moment in time, promoting the growth of rugby over there, which I think is possibly on the cusp of really taking off. And I know, Steve, you feel the same way, but one of the positive things, if there is a positive thing to come out of this, is the fact that we've actually now got an Australia against Tonga test confirmed on the 20th of October, which has only taken, the best part of a year to organise that.
Yeah, but
probably the third best team of the World Cup has actually got a test.
We're talking up this test match. How good is it that Tonga will be playing the Aussies in less than 6 weeks' time? And it's just been confirmed today. And it's like, Steve, you call it amateur, but Samuel's got a game that weekend, and I've known that fixture for weeks.
Yeah. I mean, the
amateur.
game, it is. And what's more, one of the complaints of the NRL clubs about Denver was that it's too rushed, it's too last minute. Well, Jason Moore knew he wanted to run that game, last November, October, and then it was delayed by the NRL clubs to the extent that he wasn't able to promote it properly, wasn't able to get a good crowd, and now the NRL are off doing the same thing, and they also look like calling off this South Sydney-Melbourne game, which was going to be in Los Angeles at the start of next year. So, I just think I would like to see a game-wide ban on planning anything for this year after May. Like at the professional level, I'd like to see the NRL and the Rugby Football League just say, look, if we haven't planned it for this calendar year by maybe the start of May, then it's off. And that includes internationals. Bad luck. We'll have a better calendar next year. But to me, it's amateurish. It's just amateurish. And, why not talk about Australia playing Tonga next year? I can already see we're not going to get through half of the things we want to talk about, but that is reflected obviously what's happening in this country at the moment with the EGM next week about the competition structure for next year, and we have the season drawing to a close here in England for Australian viewers and New Zealanders and US people. I imagine all the Canadians are all up on it, but the season's drawing to a close, and we don't know what teams are playing for because the structure for next year isn't determined. I think Sean, we just had a question or a comment there.
Yeah, so there's a question from John. It's still on the Denver. So do let me get this right. The Denver test is off because the RFL haven't got their money. Shouldn't this be about growing the sport, not financial gain? But you've got to pay for it. Who's going to pay for the flights, the hotels, the rental of the stadium? There is actually no organisation in rugby league that can do that at the moment. So it might be about the growth of the game from an ideological point of view, but from a practical point of view, there's no one to take that into account and to actually execute anything. There's no one. There's no such organisational person. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, should we move on to I think that's a good point to perhaps move the conversation on. You mentioned this, the EGM, the structure. Phil, I know you were at the initial press conference, the Super League press conference, which seems like an eternity back now. We haven't made any progress, it seems, since that day. It was a very positive press conference, which was then made, the Yorkshire clubs almost took a hold of it and put their slant on it. What's your view on where we will be for next year? I mean, Steve's picked on the point about not changing anything for this year. We're on the verge of trying to sort out the structure for next year, which is farcical.
An EGM next Friday to vote on whether they change the structure or stick with it for another year at least. It's incredible that we're at this stage, and it's even hard to guess what will happen for me because of a simple fact that I can't get my head around this. Of the 55 votes, I think it is 7 of them. Toronto don't get a vote. Toulouse don't get a vote, and yet there's 7 votes for people in the community game. So the Armed Forces get one, Student Rugby League, Barla, the National Conference League. Bodies like that, Schools Rugby League, get a vote. And who knows how the hell these people are going to vote? We don't know whether you've got these people who want to make change or stick with it or out whining and dining these people. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure it's all above board. There's a suggestion
like FIFA and the IOC.
There's a suggestion too that the people. I was listening to the 40-20 show yesterday. I think Mark Wilson was making a point that these clubs who have got dual reg partnerships with the parent clubs, will they dare go against what the parents clubs want? So yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to go because, as I say, 7 votes from like Schools Rugby League, Barla. Who knows? I've not got a clue how they're going to vote, but it's going to be. And
the Players' Union doesn't have a vote. I think that's the problem.
The Players' Union is a joke, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, they've tried to make it better, haven't they? Gareth Carvell and some players are involved and they've gone on the front foot. They've tried to make it better, but I guess that's the key thing: is the kind of the delineation between the professional game, which is part of the entertainment industry, and the participant game. And the clubs that can't even put together a team of 17 but call themselves semi-pro, they've got a foot in each camp, haven't they? And so
like Featherstone had 14 players the other day because he relies so heavily on the partnership with Leeds Rhinos. And I mean, even like Halifax, they only wanted to get in the qualifiers, didn't they? They have no ambitions really to get into Super League. They just wanted the money that getting higher up the table gives them. And I have nothing against them for doing that. Of course, they want the money, but it's just all a mess.
Sorry, Phil.
So I was going to put the question to you, Steve, from Phil. Is I know you've been involved in the English game for a while, and I guess asking you for an outsider's point of view probably doesn't exist because you're an insider, really. But from an Australian point of view, looking at, I mean, it is just a farce from the outside. But do you see a better way forward? And the fact that we're like Phil said, we are planning for next year, which could have implications on the rest of the games for this season, the £1 million game. Gary Hetherington's massively opposed to most things that's been suggested by Ralph Rimmer, Ian Lenigan, but his club is one of the clubs that could potentially be affected crucially by whatever is decided.
Well, I was thinking of just before we came on. Here's an example of where the two attitudes, the English attitude that, every town can get to Wembley, and which obviously in the soccer that kind of happens if you've got a rich guy, doesn't matter how big whether you're a suburb or a town or almost half a county, you can either be really bad or really good depending on a bunch of external factors. So the place where they kind of clash is that they clash everywhere, but the one that I thought of just this afternoon is that there's a problem with the draw in Super League where if you've got these loop fixtures and everyone doesn't play each other home and away, and therefore the competition is manifestly unfair. What you could do to make it fair, and what they have done, I'm sure they've done at times in Australia and in other sports, is that if you play X at home twice this year and away only once, then next year you even up.
That's what we're going to do, mate.
Yeah, but how do you do that when the identity of the teams in the competition change every year? So you got one up, one down. So you come up and you're either paying for the sins or living on the largesse of the team that you replace. You can't have that sort of self-contained, dynamic where what Ian Lenigan is talking about of promoting the top end and being able to have those kind of synergies when teams are coming up and down all the time. And I'm torn here. I like the qualifiers, but I don't like promotion and relegation. How about that? Yeah. I mean, I don't think promotion and relegation is good for Super League, but I think the qualifiers are good for rugby league in this country. So, but if you ask me to choose between the two, I'd get rid of promotion and relegation completely. I'd get rid of it.
You go with licensing.
I'd go for licensing, and you'd either expand or you'd come up with some minimum standards. And if teams couldn't meet the minimum standards, they'd be out whether they could be replaced or not. But they'd be really tight minimum standards where if you're left with 5 teams at some point, you'd have to swallow it.
Yeah, that was the problem with licensing last time. For me, it wasn't licensing so much. It was the fact that it wasn't enforced. The structure wasn't policed. In terms of stadium criteria, meeting salary cap obligations, and the rest of it.
And how about teams staying up by breaching the salary cap?
It was interesting at the Elston press conference. I don't know if it's Robert or Ian Lenigan who said it, but basically they said that promotion and relegation was almost like
Ian Lenigan said it was a trade-off. He used it himself.
So they wanted a closed shop as well. I do get the point that the Super 8's, the uncertainty of it does impact on fixtures. Look, of course it does. I mean, I've got people who can't make Wigan fixtures. I mean, trying to get to Catalan away at 2 weeks' notice was horrendous. But I get that if you knew the fixture in advance, that would benefit. And I believe that would happen. But that doesn't make me a fan of the loop fixtures. I just think they're awfully wrong. The proposal I heard, to pick up on your point before, Steve, was that if you finish in an odd position this year, the next year you would play every team who finished even, which would presumably include the newly promoted side. But then there's still a magic weekend thrown on top of that. A 5-team playoffs.
The reason for it is to provide a sky with more.
It is. But also, if you ask, Michael Carter, for example, he will say that we can't survive on just 11 home games every year. And so if you wanted to do a fair league, you'd expand it to 14 teams, then you get 13 home and away. But then, of course, the pie gets split even thinner, doesn't it? They get a smaller slice of a pie because there's 2 more teams in the top flight. And
I think it's a quality. We don't have the quality for 14 teams.
They say
we found out a few
Oh,
years
don't
ago.
they? Yeah.
I mean, even for promotion relegation now, you see the same players who get relegated tend to go to the promoted side. They're the same team wearing a different badge.
If you had the loop fixtures, though, I mean, it almost strengthens the case of having a playoffs to decide your champion, because you could always say that, oh, yeah, but Warrington had easier fixtures than St Helens this year, so let's have a playoff to decide our champion. But what about the team who finishes bottom? What if they finish bottom, having been third from bottom after everyone played home and away? You know, and they had an awful Magic weekend game, and the loop fixtures were harsher than the other 2 teams. That's what doesn't sit comfortably for me. The teams at the bottom going down for finishing bottom, having played an unfair, league table over 29 rounds.
So after that conversation, we're still no further forward.
The only thing that would resolve it for me, like, because you tie yourself up in knots thinking about possible solutions, is to put another comp on top of Super League and to find a private investor. Like, there's a private equity firm just got involved in the Premiership Rugby Union. They run over winter. Perhaps they run over winter, the Rugby Union. Yeah. So get a private equity firm to basically put on a 13-a-side rugby competition during their off season, and put the competition on top of Super League, and then make up your own rules. And you affiliate with the RFL, but basically you find your own money. I guess you've got to make sure you don't breach any broadcasting or sponsorship contracts. It's a minefield. But if this private equity firm is willing to sponsor rugby from October to April, then maybe from May to September they might be willing to sponsor rugby during that time too, because it's just too big a mess at the moment. It's just too big a mess. It's almost like you can't knock it down and start again because too many people get hurt. So the only solution I can think of is to build something new.
So,
wow, I don't think that they can't even agree on promotion and relegation, mate. Never mind a new league on top of this one.
Well, it's all about money. It's all about money. So I'm saying if you found money, like I know someone who is on the periphery of the game here in London who advises private equity firms on sports investments. So if this private equity firm is successful with Premiership Rugby Union, then why not say, do you want content all year round? I mean, I just can't see a solution to it without something new being created. I think the old stuff is just it just needs to be raised to the ground and start again. And you can't raise it to the ground; you'd be doing too much damage. So the only way you could really fix things is to find new money and do something new.
We'll draw a line under that conversation, because that is a topic that runs and runs and runs, and nobody has a perfect answer, and that's why the EGM is obviously going to take place at the end of the week. One of the third topic, I guess, to move on to, and perhaps the final topic that will lead to other things, and Stuart puts the comment on here, is can a Super League club Mad Monday compete with the Canterbury Bulldogs? For those that are unaware of this is the Canterbury Bulldogs that I think were photographed in the Daily Telegraph down in Australia on the Mad Monday outing. Perhaps, what were they doing, Steve? Getting naked, and there was lots of photographs that were floating about the Daily Telegraph. They've been criticised for it, and I was asking 2 journalists here in Steve and Phil is about the media's perspective of, are they right to report on that? I know we had a conversation, and I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. But Phil and I had a conversation earlier in the year when the Albert Kelly scandal broke, and the fact that Hull Daily Mail didn't report on that. And then Phil had to deal with, obviously, the Tompkins scandal, of which Phil was there and reported on it, did the press release with Joel Tompkins. So I'm interested, Steve, we'll start with you. Give us your, first of all, can an English club compete with that, with the Mad Monday scandal down at Canterbury?
I'm sure they have. I've seen some grainy mobile phone footage of guys who are doing much worse. And obviously they can, because the media here isn't interested. So, there isn't the same level of coverage. My attitude to this is not going to please either side of this debate. If a bunch of Hollywood A-listers, went to a pub in Sydney and got drunk and got naked, and then it was on the front of the paper, the fans of those Hollywood actors would be outraged about the report. And you'd have to say that the journalists in that case and the photographers are not working for those fans. And the fans are always going to blow up because their heroes have been portrayed in a bad light. So the reporters and the photographers are working for everybody else, not the fans who are outraged. However, and the other thing, and that's on that side, and the other thing on the same side of the argument is that I'm trying to think what the point was. If you, Phil, I'll go to you because my next point is very important, but I've forgotten what it is. So you just say something and I'll come back to it. Sorry.
Sean, is it bright out, by the way? It was daylight when I sat down to it.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that you've got like the light around has got darker and darker. But yeah, Phil, I know you had very strong views about the Albert Kelly situation at the time, and I guess this is similar to it.
Yeah, look, yeah, they're in the pub or outside the pub in the Rocks, naked. Look, don't be an idiot. If you're telling me that they've got if they're just blokes being drunk, minding their own business, then fair enough. Fill your boots over in a private club, fair enough. If you're outside a pub in the Rocks in Sydney's one of the most popular tourist areas, what the hell do they expect? And I don't even think they would have any expectations of any pity or that the media should have left them alone. I mean, geez. If a Telegraph photographer hadn't taken it, then a load of bystanders could have took it on their mobile phone. It'd be all over social media. That's what it does tickle me when some people that still have this expectations that it can go everywhere on social media, but I don't want it on the media. It's
that's the other point I was going to make, and I remember what it is now. So I always thought it was funny that the Melbourne Storm lets you go to training, and then they said it's time for the media to leave now, but there were no walls around the ground. So anyone could see it from the street, you know what I mean? And so it's the media's job to be, where where at least one member of the public can go. If one member of the public can be there, then it's fair enough for a member of the media to report on it. Then you get the placement of the story, and that comes down to pure, voyeurism, and it comes down to celebrity, gossip. Okay, the point that Phil made, though, is a good one, because I read a story of Andrew Webster where the photos were taken with telephoto lenses. The guys went outside briefly. The guys who were drunk were followed around, and then that is where the line is crossed to me, is if the media is placing itself where a member of the public can't go.
Yes.
And so could those photos have been taken on a phone? Really, the photo of the guy on the table
then that would cross
with no clothes on. Could they have been
go down back to basic privacy laws here. If you have to step on a step ladder to look over a fence to get the photographs, then that's way across the line.
Yep. Well, I agree with you there. And then, but the other, I agree with you there. And the other point, though, is, and I know a lot of the viewers and listeners are on the other side of the argument to us, okay? But the point is, if you don't like that sort of journalism, you don't like celebrity journalism, and in Sydney, NRL players are celebrities. They held to the same, standard as an elected politician, okay? And the argument is that they're basically reality TV stars, that their wages come out of TV money, their media property. That's the argument, okay? Now, I am sensing a shift where, there is a growing, like a lot of things that happen in social media, in the social media age, there's a groundswell of opinion to the contrary, that people don't accept that, and the opinion goes beyond what the law says. You can't be outraged about what's on the front of the paper if you never see the front of the paper. The mainstream media is decreasing in influence with every passing minute. So the source of your outrage is dying. So just let it die. Don't get outraged about outrage. Just ignore it.
I don't know.
If that is not a relevant media, if that's not a relevant outlet to you, then just ignore it.
Yeah, but the fact that we've both seen it, Sean and I, and you, and none of us are in Sydney, shows that their reach hasn't died from when I was in, 10, 15 years ago. It shows that it's grown, even though we're not actually buying a physical copy of a paper. And haven't had an opinion on it. I don't think it's the same as being outraged. I don't know anyone who's outraged by it. It's just almost like you said. It's almost voyeurism. It's just like, look at those idiots.
No, people are outraged at the coverage. People are outraged at the coverage, I'm kind of in the middle there, where I think if it happened in public, it's reportable, and then the prominence it's given is down to the celebrity journalism, that approach. But if you don't like it, you don't have to even consume it. You don't even have to consume it. And you might say that we've heard about it, but we didn't hear about it because of a newspaper that got thrown on a sidewalk. We heard about it because of a website, because of screen captures, because of a debate, the sort of debate we're having now. I'm actually aiding the very thing I'm railing against here. But we didn't hear about it because of a newspaper a physical newspaper. So if you can start to think that those outlets are less significant, then you can not feed the outrage. You don't have to feed the outrage if you don't want to. You can just go, oh, that's them doing that again, and move on to whatever else is happening in your life.
And of course, if we didn't have Mad Monday incidents over in Australia, we wouldn't have any ex-NRL players in the Super League. We rely on
very good point. That is a very good point. Do you know what? We should encourage them to be
absolutely,
and let the Sydney Press report them, because how else is Super League, with its salary cap the way it is, dwarfed by the NRLs? How on earth are we going to get players? I was talking to Sean beforehand, Steve, just before we came on here, because you were late. That I said he was just asking if there's an update on Lachlan Lamb going to Wigan, and I said honestly, I've not heard a thing. I think it's just dragging on. I don't know if the Sydney Roosters have told him, what's happening yet. But isn't it funny that we're talking now about Lachlan Lamb, a player who's obviously talented but has never played NRL level? Well, 18 years ago, his dad took a pay rise to come to Super League. Who was already a Queensland captain, an international, already an NRL, star, if not a superstar. He came to Wigan, and now we're discussing about the same club, same name, but a player who was not yet to play NRL. For me, it just was one of those moments. I thought, geez, that's how much financially it's shifted. And that is why we need your Joel Monaghan's, your Todd Carneys. We need all these guys to go out, get drunk, be idiots, because they enrich Super League.
And
all the pubs would go broke without them as well. So
yeah, absolutely. So
I was still the Tompkins brothers. No, one of them was leaving. Sorry,
both of them left. Two things to finish on, really. First of all, to you, Phil, about the game tomorrow, which is live on Sky, which is obviously the team that we both follow. And then finally, I'll come to you, Steve, about what you're up to this weekend over at Salford. But Phil, we were talking off air just about, I know we'll have lots of Wigan fans watching this because it's on Wigan Fan TV as well. Do you want to just give a quick update about Don Manfredi being in the squad and perhaps whether he will play tomorrow night?
Yeah, I don't think he'll play. He's in a 19-man squad, and I think Don Manfredi will be the standby player, basically, in case Dan Sargentson doesn't play. After last Friday's game, you'd say, geez, we're going to be returning home on probably the performance of the year. Certainly from a Wigan point of view, I stand corrected from any other clubs, but I thought it was a great performance. But it's taken on a complete somber feel now with the tragedy of Dan Sargentson's brother dying. He left at the weekend and returned, I think, Tuesday night. In training today, did team run, and is in the squad to play tomorrow. Sean Wayne said he's spoken to him. He wants to play. It's his decision. He will speak to him again tomorrow, and if he does play, if he wants to play, then he's going to let him play. I can't imagine. I'm sure not any of us can. No. What is going through him? How on earth he's going to deal with it? Sean says that this is his best way of dealing with it, just being around his teammates and wanting to get back out there and do it again. And I know he'll have everyone's heartfelt condolences. And I guess to answer your question about Don Manfredi, I guess he doesn't want to change the team too much from his side that beat St Helens. And Sean Wayne's point today at the press conference was that he'd put some specific players under pressure to do a job. And he reacted like, for example, Oliver Gildart on the wing. He said they thought he did a terrific job. And I don't want to almost punish them and drop them when they did exactly what I'd asked them to do against St Helens. So he said Don Manfredi's chance will come. If it isn't tomorrow against Wakefield, it's probably going to be down the line against Warrington, Hull or Huddersfield.
Okay. So that's a televised game tomorrow night. Steve, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there's a figure above your head that says in association with Mascot Browns, which obviously bears your name. And this weekend, the road trip of Mascot Browns, the road trip of Mascot Browns continues. Do you want to tell us where you'll be this weekend and the kind of things that people can expect?
Yeah, no, I'm off to, and again, I want to thank you guys for being involved in the first program here. The aim is to cover sort of, the whole rugby league world. We didn't get around to the Philippines or Bhutan, but maybe next episode. So Mascot Browns is, for those who don't know, it's a merch business. Myself and Phil Brown, who runs Tri-Tag Rugby in this country, or I think he's leaving now, but and it's international. It's international.
For years, he got business with Steve, and he disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He stopped answering my calls. We're off to the Sheffield game tomorrow night in Sheffield. Not tomorrow night, on Friday night, with all the stuff. And then Wolfpack, obviously, we are the official UK suppliers of Wolfpack stuff. So we'll be at the Salford City Roosters clubhouse on Saturday before the big game, which we didn't even get to talk about, which is Salford and Toronto on the weekend. And as far as Rugby League Hub is concerned, if you're listening, you won't know where to go. It's facebook.com/leaguehubcom, one word. The website is under construction at the moment, but really what we're focusing on is live content. And as I said at the start of the program, you get alerts when a show like this or a new podcast has been posted, or indeed a radio commentary is about to start. One click and you can listen to it anywhere. In some cases, anywhere in the world. In other cases, it's down to rights. So hoping to have actual games on there. In the fullness of time. So thanks everyone for being. As I said, it's got 3 names. If you're watching live, it's the first episode of White Line Fever Live. If you're listening via podcast, it's the first White Line Fever Kicks. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's a continuation of long dead White Line Fever Kicks, which was done in conjunction with Sydney Morning Herald a couple of years ago. So thanks to Phil and to Sean. And if it all went okay, we'll see you all next week.
Cheers, guys.